So this one's actually pretty easy and pretty fun to do. To do it though, I want to set up a visualizer so we can see what's happening a little easier. So in our fractures, I want to grab the wall small. In particular, I want this up here, the transform, back when we took it and moved it to the origin. Actually, let's get the unpacked one specifically. So, and again, this will just be for a visualizer, so don't worry about this too much. So there it is. It's polygons and points. I want to put, this is going to be all about the orientation of this thing, so I want to mark the different sides of it with different colors so we can see. So let's do random colors on this. Problem is, if we just do random colors, we might get colors like this that are fairly similar. So I want to ensure that we have a nice array of colors. I want to do an actual rainbow on this. Do a primitive wrangler and say, let's make an attribute. We'll make an integer attribute, I at face equals primnum. So primnum is a built-in attribute that knows the number of every face, or polygon I should say, but I need to assign it to a non-built-in attribute because the color, we can't use primnum here. We have to use an actual attribute we made. So that's all that is. So the color type's going to be a ramp from attribute. So what is the attribute? Well, it's called face. And we know it goes from 0 to 5 because there was 6 faces on here. I don't even need to look that up. And the attribute can be, or the ramp can be this infrared, which again is a rainbow. So there you go. That's about as different as these colors are going to get. Awesome. So save that. Let's use a copy to points because again, it uses the same exact scheme as the instance uses. Because again, in fact, inside here, there is a copy stamp, which is a cousin of copy to points. They actually used to be the same node back in the day before they split them out. Anyway, so point this to here. You got way too many of these things because we're copying it to everything. We want to just copy it to our small walls. So I'm going to use a blast. Oops. I'm going to use a blast to isolate them. I'll say part name equals concrete small wall. It's a small wall after all. So we should get that. Uh-oh, it didn't work. Let's see why not. Oh, it's wall small, isn't it? Concrete wall small. There we go. We also need to do a attribute delete on the color because we don't want to use that color. We want to use the colors we just came up with. So there you go. So we can be reasonably assured if I look at the instance here and I can see the small walls are here, and if I look here, it's the same, right? So the colors again are just representing the orientations. They're all oriented the same way. So finally, the good stuff. I'm going to move all of this. I'm going to move this up anyway. On here, on the copy and instancing, these are really two really important ones, n and up. As you can see, the n, normal, vector, is the positive z-axis of the copy, if there's not already an orient attribute, which there isn't. And the up vector is the positive y-axis of the orientation of this, which means to us, if there is no normal or up vector, it must be defaulting to what it's basically saying. The n is the plus z axis, meaning the positive z axis. So what am I trying to say? If I set the normal to be that, meaning 0, 0, 1, meaning positive z, nothing changes. It doesn't matter if it's on or off. Similarly, and you'll notice there's no v in front of these because these are recognized by Houdini. You can put a v in front of them or not. In fact, earlier when I did the scale, we also didn't need the v there, but I put it there usually for clarity, because why not? Anyway, doing this changed nothing. However, if I were to have changed, let's say n to -1, it flipped them around. Crazy, right? If I were to change up to -1, it flipped them upside down. So we can see by default, these are their defaults. So we want to randomize these attributes so that sometimes it's 1 and sometimes it's -1. And sometimes this is 1 and sometimes this is -1. So that's easy enough to do with an attribute randomize. And we'll do them both in exactly the way you just saw it. So we don't want to change the color into this pastel hellscape. Let's change the n attribute. So if I look at this, you can see changing the n made random normals, which really screwed this stuff up. We don't want to come up with 3 random numbers. We want to come up with 2 values, either one or the other. And we don't even want to change x or y anyway. We only want to change z to be sometimes -1 and sometimes 1. And you can see we flipped some of these things. If you go over to options, you can change the global seed to flip them different random amounts. Your global seed will be different than mine because literally every time you, why am I not getting it? Every time you put one of these down, you're going to get a different global seed amount. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Just choose one of them. It doesn't matter at all. And there you go. And similarly, copy and paste it. Let's change up. Now up, remember, it's not this, it's this. So now you can see, by turning it on and off, we flip them in that direction as well. And so that's what we ended up with. We went from uniformly everything here to 2 kinds of rotations, which should pretty reasonably jazz everything up. So going back down here to our result, we can look, and if we look close enough, we can see that that's true. So like look at the windows, for example. This one has the kind of point of impact kind of in the lower right, and this one has it kind of in the upper left. We can see that this kind of triangular shape here is here, but in the bottom one here, it's not. It actually was rotated to down here. So sometimes they're flipped over to the other side, and sometimes they're rotated around. And that's true all over. So we've got an extra layer of variation on here to help us out. As I think I said before, when we have all of our glue constraints later on, we're going to cluster these pieces together to give rise to larger complex shapes, which will further hide some of these similar fractures. But this is a super cheap and easy way to get some free variation without really trying very hard. And you get to explore some CG concepts along the way. There we go. So finally, we've set it all up. We set up all of our simulation pieces. Now we need to set up our simulation.